today we have module 2 of our adventure today, So a couple of sort of quick memory lane things to remind us how what we did last week and how we're getting into this week. We also shared this quote from Adrienne Marie Brown and their emergent strategy that we use sort of to center us in the work and why this work is important. The next thing is we then pivoted into, again, with that grounding, why this is important and looking at how traditional search is dusty. And we're all here to reimagine what it might be when it centers values of equity, inclusion, justice, anti-racism. And that led us to our 4 objectives for the course. Again, how do we center these organizational values to create an inclusive and transparent process? What does that look like to lead with these processes from a place of care? Just realizing my video is overlapping. Number 3, in what ways does my understanding of power dynamics impact this process? And how might onboarding be informed by an inclusion selection process, inclusive selection process? So those are the 3 things we'll keep coming back to over our next couple sessions together, and sketched out the sort of 6/4 buckets that we'll be exploring during the course. Today, we're in this section where we're looking at search scoping and sourcing, taking the work we did last week around finalizing the job posting, and then starting to turn this into who, what, where, how do we map our networks. Next couple of weeks will be, next week is all about the interviews, and then we'll land the plane with reference checks, offer stage, and onboarding. Katrina?
Yeah, we showed you this slide, the proposed overall arc. So reminder that, some of this might look pretty similar to a traditional process, but that we sort of, talk about this in terms of all of these different places where we're pausing to reconsider or to reframe with an anti-oppressive lens. We also talked about these bars that go down to the different descriptors, and that, where you see bigger bars, that sort of measure it with sort of a bigger, heavier lift, or might need some more care and attention in order to do so. We talked about the resource requirements. So really thinking about at each of these stages, there might be work required. There might be people that you need to add or bring into the process. There might be more heavy lifting in certain areas, or choices that have to be made around kind of budget items or things like that. And so really just being aware of kind of where in the process you're looking to shift or change something, and what those implications are for the resources you might need to bring on board.
Then we introduced the concept of KSAs, knowledge, skills, and abilities, as buckets that help us separate and review our job description, job posting in ways that can really be grounded in the things that candidates need to possess or acquire on the job in order to be successful in the role. We didn't share this in the session last week, but I'll link to it in the resources for this module. This is another tool that we created that helps take a look at it. It's poorly named the behavior dashboard. So if anyone has a better name for this, just let us know. But it's really taking a look at, it was initially created to answer the question, what differentiates a director from a senior director, or a junior software developer from a software developer from a senior software developer, if not length of tenure, which is typically a proxy that's used. Oh, a senior director, they're just on the job longer. But we wanted to say that's actually not always the case. Tenure is not always what differentiates that. So we tried to distill it into behaviors that would be demonstrated at the different levels in the organization, or that roles would demonstrate. And so we'll share this resource so you can dive into it a little bit more. Number 1, that's sort of the initial level. If you'd consider someone new in a role and new in their career, or earlier in their career, 4 would be more senior level. And then the key here is also around frequency and impact, if you will. How frequently do you do the thing, and sort of what's your impact? You might do it, but maybe you only impact yourself or one other person on your team versus a global thought leader. So taking a look at these can also help to distill what's included in the job description and what's included in job posting.
We sent you on your way on Wednesday with the weekly challenge to read or review a few different articles. We had Tema Kuhn's Characteristics of White Supremacy Culture, and we had Sins and Valid's 10 Principles of Disability Justice. We encouraged you to sort of reflect on those two documents as you looked at a position posting, and just to think about, what language is being used, how we might decode or reframe the language that's used in sort of a traditional posting, so that when you start to look at postings that you're working on, you'll sort of remember or recall some of that process, or be able to know, oh yeah, I should go back and look at some of these resources. So that's where we left off. And just wanting to also say, if there are any questions about the readings or anything that you'd like to share with us, we sort of didn't include this little disclaimer of if you haven't read this before, but just wanting to say that that is something we'll do going forward, that it's a lot. If you haven't read them before, if you haven't been introduced to it before, it is really easy to kind of get lost in that, and to start to really think about all of the ways this shows up in the organization, or be challenged by that.